Hello, everyone. Welcome to Michael's Record Collection. I am here today with Chantel McGregor. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, I wanted to start out by asking you. You've got these two new albums that have come out this summer, the Shed Sessions, Volumes One and Two, and I want to just kind of take me through, what led to these releases, and also they were released a month apart. I just was curious as to how that came to be, where you would release one and then another, rather than some would put it all out at once, some would maybe spread it out more.
Um, it's probably just because I'm absolutely nuts. I don't know. No, there was a rationale in there somewhere. Basically, the shed sessions came about because over here in lockdown, it sort of started obviously at the start of the pandemic, and obviously gigs were cancelled. People couldn't go out, and I was like, oh, what can I do to try and cheer people up a little bit and kind of still give them live music and keep in touch with fans and stuff like that. So I thought, right, I'll do a live stream. Did one and then sort of did another one the week after. And it just carried on from there every single week for over a year, every Saturday at 5 o'clock. I think it went on it was about 15 months I did. And yeah, every single week. I think I missed one for Boxing Day, and that was it.
Wow.
So it was really good for keeping in touch with fans and keeping them in touch with each other as well and making new social connections and stuff. It was really, really good. And yeah, so everybody was sort of saying, why don't you do an album of the songs that you've been doing and, re-record it properly and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I thought, oh, yeah, okay then. So the first half of the pandemic, I was up north in Bradford, my hometown, and that was just me and an acoustic guitar. And then in the June, I moved down to Cambridge, and my boyfriend, who's like an amazing keyboard player, it meant I could do more electric things,
Hmm.
so more widdly guitar stuff and that sort of thing. So I just kind of said, right, they're so different, the two different things. It wouldn't work as one album because they're just so completely separate. So that's why I thought two albums. And then I was like, oh, it's nearly the end of the pandemic. Lockdown's lifting. I need to get these things out. So yeah, it was kind of like, right, I better put one out. And then it was like, oh, yeah, everybody's kind of going back to work and going back to the shops and the pubs. Better put the other one out then. That's why it was 1 month apart.
So these songs were chosen. Were some of these suggested by listeners, and some were your choices? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Some of these, what I think struck me about these two releases is that there were there were some obvious, like especially with the acoustic album, the acoustic guitar album, there were some obvious choices, some James Taylor stuff like that, and there were a few that were not so obvious, and I think that really stood out to me. Like, how did you reimagine Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer, for example, as an acoustic, solo song?
Um, I have. It's just one of those things I like to do. It's same like with the Metallica song. I just kind of listen to things and think, oh, that would really work if you strip it back.
Hmm.
And I think that's probably like the art of a good song is if you can strip it back to an acoustic guitar and a vocal and it still works and stands up, then you know it's a good song. So to me, it was like, obviously Sledgehammer's an amazing song. And I was like, actually, there is something in this that we could, make this work. So yeah, we're just kind of inspired to do that.
Another one of the less obvious choices was Voodoo Child. And that I think really shows off your ability with the guitar. Can you how long did it take to come up with that, and you know what kind of, I guess I'm not a guitar player. I have a guitar. I would not call myself a guitar player. Uh, just what went into creating the music for that particular track?
I've kind of played that for a while at shows and things,
Hmm.
because I sometimes do acoustic shows over in the UK. And sort of, basically, it was one of those things of I'd never played it, and then my dad, I think, shouted out, "Do Voodoo Child" or something, and I was like, "This is gonna sound awful because it's not an acoustic song. It's gonna sound terrible." And I did it, and everybody was like, "This is great. This is amazing," and I was like, "This is awful." But everybody really liked it. I don't think it's such a great version, but everybody loves that version. So everybody says, "Oh, we want this on the album. You've got to put it on." So I put it on. But personally, I don't think it's that great a song. But
That's, I think that's what's great about music is that even when the artist is not necessarily that's not their proudest moment, sometimes those are the ones that the fans really enjoy. It's like a happy accident. But that's why I asked you the questions, because it sounds like you worked for quite some time on those licks and getting that right, and it sounds very complicated.
yeah, it's just one of those things. Because I kind of wanted to craft it a little bit so it wasn't just like, the album version and stuff like that, the
Hmm.
original. I wanted to make it a little bit different. And obviously playing it on acoustic, that is totally different, but just kind of making it a little bit more my own than just doing a straight cover as well. Because, it's so easy to just do straight covers of things and you just think actually you've got to make it your own and put your own stamp on things.
Right. Let me take you back a little ways and ask you about, um, how did music start for you? How did the guitar start for you? Where did you get interested in it? And was guitar the starting point, or did you start on piano, or how did that work?
That's also my dad's fault. Another thing for blaming him. Yeah, he used to play guitar when I was like a tiny baby, and I used to, as soon as I could walk, I'd sort of toddle over to him and detune his guitar or put dints in his guitar and things. So he was like, "Yeah, we need to get her a guitar." So at 3, they got me a half size. I did have like a monophonic keyboard from being, I think, 9 months old, so I could get the notes into my head and things. Um, but yeah, started guitar at 3, and Dad sort of gave me a little bit of tuition, and then I got proper lessons at 7, and it just went from there.
When did you realize that you had a real talent for the instrument?
I don't think I have yet. It's just something I have always enjoyed, more than a thing of going, oh, I'm good at this or anything. It's just more something that I've always enjoyed, and
Mhm.
you know, obviously you've got to have a bit of confidence to get on stage and do it. But I always kind of think there's going to be people out there that can do everything better than you. So just do your best and enjoy it, and hopefully people enjoy listening.
Yeah. It's just interesting to me because I always wonder, what is the point where people realize that, not everybody can do this thing that I'm doing. And certainly you do some things that a lot of people can't do. And I imagine that at some point, um, you're a young woman. I imagine that at some point there has been somebody who has sort of scoffed at seeing you walk in and tune up your guitar and get ready to play. And I just wondered if you had any good stories about a time that you kind of made people shut up and listen.
So many. Um, it's one of those things of being a female guitarist in a kind of man's world, essentially, which it is. Rock guitar is kind of mainly men. That's always been kind of a tricky thing, and you still get the patronising ones who go, "Oh, do you know what a plectrum is?" Or this amp, this is the treble and the middle and the bass and the gain that'll make it a bit more distorted. And it's like, yeah, no. But you still get that. Don't matter if, how long you've been playing or what you've done, you still get that.
Hmm.
And it used to really, really bother me, but now I just go, well, this is what I can play, blah, blah, blah. And then they go, oh, and they get a bit put out and then they ignore me. That's fine. It's not my problem, that's their problem.
Exactly, exactly right. So do you recall like what the first song was that you sort of really latched onto as a kid?
Um, I was into loads of different things as a kid. So I was into obviously what my parents were playing and things. So they were playing like a lot of Fleetwood Mac, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, that sort of thing. I remember my mum had this like tape in the car that was like pure soft metal. It was called, and it was like a compilation, and it had like Mr. Big on it, and Richie Kotzen and stuff like that. And I was like about 4-year-old going, "Oh, can we have Mr. Big on again, please?" And so I was always into that kind of thing as a kid. So probably like just that sort of thing, that sort of music, rather than just one song or one band. I was
Hmm.
just into so much music. I just sort of loved it and immersed myself all the time in it.
Hmm. Has there been an album that's sort of stuck with you through the years? I know you mentioned Fleetwood Mac. You've done several Fleetwood Mac covers in your career. Is that one that sticks out to you?
Yeah, I guess, everybody says Rumours, because it's just such an iconic album.
Yeah.
But there's quite a few. I mean, like Jeff Buckley's Grace, that's always one that I always come back to and go, oh, this is incredible. Chris Whitley, his album Living with the Law, it's just like something that I always come back to and go, this is just perfection. It's so good.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, probably those three.
So Shed Sessions Volume 1 is you and acoustic guitar. Shed Sessions 2 is there's more piano and there's some electric guitar as well, and some acoustic guitar. What I found interesting was reading about your approach to recording the vocals for this album. Could you tell us a little bit about that process? Because I understand it involves a wardrobe.
It was hell. Basically, I mean these two albums. Well, the first one it was recorded like twice, I think, because I did it once, messed with it, and edited it, and it just sounded too kind of perfect, too polished. So I scrapped that, redid it all again, and basically just went in the bedroom and recorded like guitar and vocals at the same time. Mic'd the guitar, DI'd it, and one mic for the vocals, and came to send it all over to Wayne, who was producing it, and went, I don't like the vocal sound. It's terrible. The mic's not right. It's picking the guitar up. I'm not happy with this. So we he'd edited like I think there's 12 on there, and he'd edited 11 of them and mixed them. And I was going, oh, there's this bit that I just don't like on each bit, and so it got to the last one, and I said, can I just re-sing it with a proper like decent studio mic and in a sort of soundproofed area? And he was like, go on then, just do it. So I did it. I sent it him, and it sounded like just so much better. So I was like, right, can I redo the other 11 as well, please? So redid all that, and the wardrobe. Basically, obviously because of the pandemic, I couldn't gig, so I couldn't earn. So I'd been doing a little bit of voiceover work, which obviously needed soundproofing, and I didn't have a studio down here. So all I did was went in the wardrobe with the microphone, set it all up on like a board thing where your jeans and your trousers go. There's like these like rails that you can put your jeans on. So I
Hmm.
put a big whiteboard on that, covered it and soundproofed it. All the clothes in the wardrobe soundproofed the wardrobe, and I resung the whole thing in there. And yeah, so I sang in a wardrobe.
See, now in the United States, we don't really use that word very often, wardrobe, and we get this picture in our head of you crawling into like this cabinet, like on the C.S. Lewis Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe thing. Is that how it was, or it was more like what we call a closet?
It's probably more of a closet. Yeah, I never got to Narnia, so
That's good. Sometimes you don't come back. Um, but yeah, that thing that it kind of stood out on the press release talking about doing it in the wardrobe. What mic did you use? You talked about using a good studio mic.
yeah, it was a blue woodpecker.
Okay.
So lovely, lovely warm condenser. Just yeah, it's a lovely mic. It works really well for my voice. I like it.
Um, at the risk of confusing my listeners to the podcast version of this, who's this creature behind you that I see?
It's this way. That's Raven, my cat, who you held up there about 30 seconds before you connected, and I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? Oh. But she's been really good, and she's not actually clawed me, so I'm quite happy she's fine there.
It's good. It's always nice to have guests. I just had Mike Cannell from the Cannells recently, and his dog made an appearance. So, and audio and video. Um, One thing that drew me to Volume 2 is that I noticed right away in reading the track listing. I'm a big progressive rock fan, and I noticed the Steven Wilson songs right away.
Yeah.
And I was curious as to how Steven Wilson's music came across, how you cross paths with it, and how you gravitated to it, and like what's the extent of your fandom of Steven Wilson?
Massive. absolutely adored his music for donkey's years. Back to the Porcupine Tree stuff, I just love it. You know, things like Open Car and Arriving Somewhere and all that stuff. It's just absolutely phenomenal. So I'm a massive, massive Stephen Wilson fan. And obviously, when he put out the album The Raven That Refused to Sing, I was just like, this is the best album ever made. It's one of those albums where, I mean, the guitar playing on it by Guthrie Govan's just like, it's just out of this world. So I never thought I could tackle those songs. And Jamie was like, the keyboard player, who was like, you know, why don't you just give it a go and just see how it sounds on it? We'll learn it for a shed session and see how it goes. So we did The Raven That Refused to Sing first, and I was like, actually, this kind of works. You know, there's no bass, there's no drums, but we can make this work. It's something
Mm-hmm.
different. And then everybody was like, why don't you do Drive Home? And I'm going, because I can't play that guitar solo at the end, because you know, you just don't try and play the Drive Home guitar solo at the end if you're in your right mind, because nobody's ever going to do it as well as Guthrie. And then I was like, do you know what? I'm going to give it a go and see how I can do it. And it's, you know, it won't be as good as Guthrie, but I'll put my own stamp on it, and, you know, it'll be my interpretation of it rather than a copy of it. And I did, and it sounded all right. So I did it on Shed, and people loved it and said, you've got to put this on the album. So yeah, so a couple of Stephen Wilson songs, but yeah, I've been to see him quite a few times, like at the Albert Hall in London and things, and oh, it's just so good. It's just incredible.
Yeah, it's a shame that he's not more widely known here in the States, but I think it's slowly coming along. But I think a lot of fans here are not really happy with the Future Bites, although I find that most of it is great. I don't know where you stand on
I love it. I mean, a lot of people over here are not big fans of the Future either.
Yeah, it's a new direction.
It is, but then there's been things, you know, when you look at like the previous albums and they were putting out things like Permeating and things, everybody criticised it and says, you know, what's this song? It's like ABBA, you know, this isn't a Stephen Wilson thing. And that was kind of like the next thing after the Raven album, which was just like incredible.
Hmm.
Um, and everybody's going, what is this? It's terrible. It's pop music. And he's been on, you know, over here he was on like the morning news or something, which was massive for him, because he's not really had that sort of commercial, you know, breakthroughs and things.
Hmm.
But yeah, everybody everybody criticised it. But I thought it was fun song to dance to, you know.
I like Permeating, and I think he would take it as a compliment to say it sounds like ABBA because he loves ABBA.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I think that's the thing for me about music as well. It's like, you know, progressive music, you know, it gets a lot of people that are like, no, unless it's, you know, King Crimson and it's got time displacement and it's got, you know, weird modal stuff going on,
Yeah.
then we're not going to accept it because it doesn't fit into our little imagination of what prog is. And to me, it's like, well, that just think of the word progressive. Yeah, it's got to progress, it's got to change, it's got to evolve. And that's all Stephen Wilson's doing is, you know, is pulling different inspirations from different places and turning it into what he thinks is prog. And that's, you know, to me, that is what prog is because it's evolving.
Yeah. I think he's a fantastic artist, and I mean, you may not follow an artist on every section of their journey, but I think that's fine. I mean, it's ultimately the artist has to do what they feel is right for them, and what they're interested in and what they find exciting. And if they're not finding it exciting, you're probably not going to find it as exciting as a listener either because it's going to come through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the thing. They've got to enjoy it because if not, they stood on stage playing and going through the motions and they've no belief in what they're doing. So what's the point?
Yeah. So one of the songs that stood out to me too was your cover of Foolish Games by Jewel, and the reason it stood out was because at times in that song you sound just like her.
Um, I don't know.
Have you been I mean, is that did you sung it pretty close to, faithful to the original.
Yes.
Did you realize that I mean, she just happens to have the same kind of vocal tones as you, or
I think that probably stems from when I was first starting to like sing. Because I sort of started at jam sessions and things when I was 12, and at that time I wasn't really playing electric guitar. I was just kind of doing well. I was playing electric, but I wouldn't do it in public. And I was like, right, well, how am I going to get up and play if I can't sing? So I better learn to sing. So I was singing along to things like, lots and lots of Jewel, lots of Sheryl Crow, Bonnie Raitt, that sort of thing, to try and just learn how to sing, really learn the techniques and the sounds and the tones and things of how to get sort of a, I don't know, not sound like a 12-year-old and sound a bit more of a rich kind of quality voice.
Hmm.
And I've been a massive Jewel fan since I was like a kid. So I guess it just kind of filters into how you phrase things and how you tonally sound a little bit. That's probably why.
Yeah. So these are your fifth and sixth albums, is that correct?
Are they fourth and fifth or hang on? I should
I don't,
know, but I
I don't
really.
know
It's
if you count the live one. I guess
yeah,
it matters.
yeah. So there's three. No, it's fourth and fifth.
Fourth and fifth. Okay. And do you have plans in the works for another album of originals?
Yeah, absolutely. So well, before the pandemic, I was doing an acoustic kind of alternative arrangements album of some of my originals, which was like taking some of my songs from the first and second album and then turning them with weird instruments into like bluegrass versions and really weird stuff with percussion and banjos and all sorts of strange things. So I was doing that, and that's mostly recorded. So that was going to come out, but obviously pandemic, couldn't go in the studio anymore and couldn't see the band. So that's kind of not shelved, but it will get finished at some point. But also, I'm writing the originals for the next studio album, um, which yeah, so that's on the way, and that'll be with the band, or I assume it'll be with the band anyway.
Mhm. It's interesting because I've spoken to probably, I don't know, three or four other artists who have all put out covers albums during this pandemic, and it seems like this is the pandemic of cover songs. Nobody wants to waste their original stuff until they can go out and play it. And is that something that's been a consideration for you, not having been able to do live gigs?
Yeah, absolutely. And also the getting into a studio thing, because, for me, it's like to do an originals album. I want to be in a studio. I want to do it properly with the producer and work on backing vocals and stuff like this.
Hmm.
And to do that just sat in the house in a wardrobe, you kind of don't get the whole thing of, how it would be in a studio. I mean, you can kind of emulate it, but it's not the same. And it literally is that is, I don't want to waste putting out an album of originals that I've sung in a wardrobe.
I hear you. I hear you. So we just warned people not to put Steven Wilson in a box, so I'm going to ask you to put yourself in a box now anyway, and ask you how would you categorize yourself as an artist? Do you think of yourself as a folk singer? Do you think of yourself as a rock artist? What do you how would you describe your music to somebody who's never heard your music before?
It's really complex because I've always kind of been pigeonholed a little bit into the blues category, but
Hmm.
I'm not blues. I've never really been blues, but because I play electric guitar and the solos in my music, people go, it must be blues. Um, I mean, there's blues influences, there's progressive influences, but then I like to do acoustic. So there's folk and country influences. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's a real mishmash of blues, rock, folk, prog, country, acoustic singer songwriter, bit of everything, a bit of grunge in there as well with my band stuff.
Hmm.
Because it's kind of riffy and grungy.
Is there an artist that you would say, if you like this person, you would like my music? Or is it just too all over the place to make that decision?
Eh, Probably things like Stephen Wilson actually, because he's kind of got that sort of eclectic mix of the acoustic stuff and then the really noisy stuff and the guitar solo stuff. So that's probably the closest.
Yeah. One of the songs that you covered was Radiohead's Creep, and it's you managed to take this song and make it very haunting and very fragile in a way. And I was curious too as to you made the conscious decision to sing the clean version.
Yeah.
Um, what went into making that decision, and did you consider doing the non-clean version?
No. it's it's one of those difficult things because when we were doing the shed session, there were a lot of younger people watching. So,
Hmm.
kids had watched with the parents and stuff. And I've always been really, really conscious of that. Like at shows, we don't have bad language on stage. Shed session, there's no bad language. Even when you break a string, there's still no swears. And I just think, for me, it's like, maybe it's a bit of a strategic decision as well, because also you want these kids to get into you while they're young so that they grow with your music and they're buying it when they're 20. And I think if you make it so that your albums are full of swear words and stuff, you're immediately removing that section of that age group. To me, it's just silly, because it's like, well, yeah, sometimes swear words do have a bit more effect, but then also people don't also want to hear that
Hmm.
sometimes. So for me, it's just a case of it didn't cross my mind as to. Plus, my mum would have probably killed me as well if I'd have put it
Yeah,
there.
and I like as a parent, I wouldn't play that in the car when my
Oh,
daughter was in the car, kind of thing. So yeah, you are limiting your audience somewhat and handcuffing yourself a little bit. But I think too the decision to have it be the clean version plays into how just sort of fragile and delicate and all those things that your version is. I find it just an incredibly beautiful version.
oh, thank you very much. I wanted to convey literally how you've said it, as a haunting kind of delicate, broken version.
Hmm.
A little bit twisted, because the second album, it kind of, for me, it feels more of a concise album where the whole theme is sort of a little bit fragile and a little bit,
Hmm.
damaged and a little bit twisty, and quite dark, and emotional. So Creep, that's why I opened with Creep, because I was like, this is how the album should feel. Hopefully, it carries through all the other songs too.
Yeah, Radiohead's version comes off as a bit mopey, a bit sad sacky, whereas like you said, yours is haunting, and you do have that vibe throughout the record. You've got an Ella Fitzgerald song on there. You've got Tori Amos on there, and Alanis's Uninvited. So it does have that sort of darkness throughout that album, and yet with only a few instruments and your vocals, it's not a heavy album.
No, Um, for me, that was the weird thing, because obviously, the band, well, the live album is heavy, and Lose Control, the previous studio album, was heavy. Um, and it was like, right, how can I make this sound dark, but without it sounding heavy, without the instrumentation of having strings or,
Hmm.
loads of different instruments? Because basically, I also wanted to recreate how it sounds on a Shed session.
Hmm.
Um, which obviously there were a few little overdubs where I put a bit of acoustic guitar to pad things out a bit, but you know, for me it was like, well, there's no point making an album that sounds nothing like the Shed session, because what's the point? That's what it's meant to be. So yeah, it was a bit of a challenge as to how to make it sound big, but without it sounding a mess, or without it sounding too far from the live versions of things.
Yeah, I think that having that darkness without the weight of it being heavy is is probably as Steven Wilson of a concept as you get.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
and it makes it more of a challenge as well. I mean, things like Uninvited. I mean, that's a really, really dark song. It's quite a creepy song, really.
Hmm.
Um, and for me, it was like, right, well, the that's as heavy as it's probably going to get. With the ending, with the distorted guitar and stuff, and it's like, well, how do you build this when all you've got's a piano, and an electric guitar playing at the same time? But hopefully, it worked.
Yeah, well, I think it works really well. These two albums are available now. Where is the best place for you, where you benefit the most for people to buy these Shed Sessions CDs?
Both from my website, which is chantelmcgregor.com.
Okay, and where can people find you on social media?
I've got Facebook, so if you just pop my name into Facebook, it's there. It's spelled Chantel McGregor, and also Instagram, Twitter, everything basically, apart from TikTok, because I just don't understand it. I think I'm too old for TikTok.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if you just play some Fleetwood Mac, I think you just go viral. I think that's how it works on TikTok.
Or maybe I should do that then. That sounds even fun.
Like be skateboarding and drinking some milk or orange juice or something, and playing some Fleetwood Mac. What's next for Chantel McGregor? What's the next big project? What's going on? Are you hitting the road?
Yeah, absolutely. So now shows can happen again. I'm back out on the road. So the back end of the year is quite busy, which is fantastic. After about 18 months of having pretty much no gigs, it's lovely to be back out playing. So yeah, that's mainly the thing, is doing that and then finish writing the album, and then hopefully next year it'll be in the studio and get another album out.
Yeah. The the folks on this side of the pond haven't gotten to know you that well yet, and I know that the work visas for musicians are cost prohibitive. Um, do you foresee any opportunities to get over here and do some shows?
I mean, I'd absolutely love to come there and play shows, but it's the viability of it. I think partly the problem is because I'm an independent artist. It's like there's not a big record company that can pay for the really expensive visas and
Hmm.
everything like that. So it's literally down to, can I afford to do this? And it just is so expensive for visas and everything like that. And, the costs of actually getting there, moving around the country, paying for a band to be there and things, it's crazy money. I mean, we're kind of now in that position as well, going to Europe. So that's maybe not going to happen very soon either, because now the visas and the carnets and everything for that are crazy money. Um, but it's one of those things. Hopefully, at some point, we will come over the pond and put a tour together and come and see y'all.
Well, Chantel McGregor, you've been fantastic. I've enjoyed your just having this chat with you about the Shed Sessions records. I think they're terrific. I think that there's some surprises on them. There's some songs that probably are a little less surprising when you hear a Joni Mitchell song or a James Taylor song or a Jewel or something like that. But just some you tackle Metallica, you tackle Stephen Wilson. You do some fantastic covers of these. The Peter Gabriel cover is going to be in my rotation for a while because it's such a different take on Sledgehammer. And I've enjoyed your time, and I wish you the best of luck with both of these. I hope they do very well for you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.